Titan Asset Recovery's agents were known for their tireless persistence. As I ran around in a panic, trying to cram everything into one small suitcase, a thunderous knock on the front door echoed through the room. Gasping, the stepmother carried a heavy chest filled with her haute couture collection from the closet into the hallway. Its weight was enormous, about the same as 3 sacks of flour, but for a woman whose life's pleasures revolved around fashion, it was just another obstacle. "Does Mr. Harrison know?" I asked sharply, stopping with an armful of hats. "We didn't even notify him of the upcoming visit." Harriet brushed a damp lock of hair from her forehead and straightened up to her full height. "I was going to discuss something with you, but the opportunity never came," she said, but was interrupted by another loud knock on the door. There was a dull thud in my chest. There was a flicker of sympathy in her brown eyes. "Claire, you can't join me. Mr. Harrison loves me. He will say hello to me, but not to a young woman he doesn't know. Your father—" "Don't you dare mention him," I intervened sharply, causing Harriet to flinch. "It's only been a year since Dad left us, and yet you're eager to marry your sworn enemy. Your father," she said above me, "has agreed to an alliance with the Frost family. Adam will be a suitable husband for you, Claire. I wasn't going to tell you about your engagement just yet, but we're homeless now. The agents won't break in unless we let them, but we can't hide here forever. I will seek refuge with Mr. Harrison, and you, my dear, have no other place than your arms, your bride." Her words came to me as if muffled by water. I dropped the hats, and without wasting a moment, Harriet quickly picked them up and carefully placed them in the chest. "Go to Adam, Claire," Harriet ordered firmly. "You are the daughter of my ex-husband, and my conscience forbids me to take you to Mr. Harrison's side." "I refuse to meet Adam," I whispered, overcome with horror. "My father would never have engaged me to him. You must be lying." "Frost has a dark reputation that precedes them. Perhaps murderers, but you don't have to worry about who your future husband might be dealing with, my dear. Take advantage of your wealth, breed miniature dogs, enjoy gatherings with friends while drinking chilled cocktails." Her words faded into the background. I resolutely grabbed my suitcase and quickly walked towards the exit. Leaving my home without looking back, I almost collided with a Titan enforcer, who clearly did not expect our quick surrender. As soon as my feet left the last step and touched the paved path, rescuers swarmed around. Now Harriet can handle them herself. The moment a debt collection agent sets foot on the property, the house and everything inside becomes the property of the debt collection agency. Hats, dresses, shoes, and an extensive collection of handbags. All of this Harriet bought with the money that my father left us before he died, so that we would not starve. The funds quickly ran out, but Harriet's desire to receive the latest collections never went away, and so the debts began to accumulate. Still, I looked back at the house, if only for a moment. Spacious and bright, it stood in the middle of a fragrant garden and no longer belonged to the Defleur. Now I was not just a bankrupt aristocrat, but a bankrupt aristocrat with nowhere to call home. The few bills I had stashed away long before Harriet mortgaged the estate barely covered a few nights in a cheap hotel and a modest dinner of black pudding and a cup of milk. My heart ached with pain. Angrily wiping away burning tears, I confidently moved towards the gate. Harriet was right. I had nowhere to go but get married, but not Adam Frost. After a while, I nervously walk along the noisy street in front of the marriage agency. Hearts Aflame opened early in the morning, apparently aimed at people like me. Who in their right mind would rush to look for a life partner at dawn? Only those who were evicted by merciless collectors. In truth, my plan was indecently simple. I would select the first profile that matches my credentials, and then suggest it. "Just come in already," gesticulated impatiently Hearts Aflame's secretary, a skinny blonde whose appearance I spent several minutes perfecting. It was clean and cool inside. Snow-white walls and floors, steel-colored furniture, metal figurines on glass shelves. The smell of freshly brewed coffee with caramel was so strong that my mouth immediately began to water. The collectors did not allow me to have breakfast. They woke me up at dawn and then knocked on doors and windows for an hour. I had just put on my travel dress and hastily tied my hair up before I even had time to apply my makeup. I hoped that my suitcase contained everything important and not just a few pairs of stockings and nightgowns. I packed my things in a hurry and half asleep. "Madame Lark is busy right now," said the secretary, pointing to the sofa by the window, "but she will be free soon." Are you new to our agency?" I nodded confusedly. I sat down on the edge of the sofa, placed the suitcase at my feet, and looked around. The cold interior was so incongruously decorated with plush pink hearts hanging from the ceiling that I winced. The secretary noticed and snorted. The decor was done by Madame Lark's ex-husband, but after the opening, Madame added these charming details herself. The designers would never have allowed this to happen during the renovation. I didn't care who decided to hang garlands of plush butts. That's what all those hearts resembled. And then the door to Madame Lark's office swung open. "Next!" The matchmaker released the young man and stepped back to allow me to enter. The man glanced at me out of the corner of his eye and muttered something to the secretary, who answered, but their words were lost to me. With a kind smile, Madame Lark invited me to sit opposite her desk. She pulled out a blank sheet of paper from her drawer and handed me a pencil. "Please write." My fingers suddenly trembled, and a lump formed in my throat from excitement. "What should I write?" "Your name, age, and requirements. You came to submit a profile, didn't you?" "Actually, no." I put down the pencil and pushed the paper away. "I would like to see the profiles of men who are already in your archive." Madame Lark raised an eyebrow in surprise. She straightened her gray hair that had escaped from under her hat and stretched her brightly painted lips into a smile. "Who exactly are you interested in, miss?" "Lady DeClaire," I corrected her, raising my chin proudly. "What difference does it make if I'm penniless and homeless? My title remains with me." I was not a miss, but a lady. The prefix D impressed Madame Lark so much that she cried out in surprise. I quietly inhaled and exhaled the air, saturated with the aromas of coffee and light, expensive perfume. The latter, it must be said, clearly belonged to a man. Most likely the one who left the office shortly before me. I was not able to get a good look at his face, but judging by his height and broad shoulders, the gentleman was very handsome. I wondered who he was looking for here. "I need a man with his own living space, who works, who doesn't drink." I stopped myself. Why did I need an ideal? I actually had no intention of living with him. "Anyone will do," I concluded, and nodded to myself. The secretary brought 2 tiny cups of coffee. She silently put them on the table and quietly left the closet. Madame Lark tapped her lower lip with her finger and then pulled 2 folders from her desk drawer, one red and one blue. "Here are all the profiles, Lady DeClaire. But before I show them to you, I need to make sure that you meet the criteria of these men. Tell me about your education, your family. Do you have a dowry, or is your family tree in debt?" "This year I graduated from the medical academy with honors. No parents, no dowry." I sighed and looked at my suitcase. "Except maybe a few dresses." The red folder disappeared back into the desk. Madame Lark pulled out several sheets from the blue and handed them to me. "That's all I can offer you." The matchmaker's smile was no longer as sweet as at the beginning of our conversation. Of course, she was of little interest to poor brides. After all, we could not afford VIP profiles, not to mention order a wedding celebration from her agency. The first sheet showed an attractive older gentleman. He was looking for a gentle and modest lady without physical defects, and I, rightly judging that I possessed all the necessary qualities, except meekness and modesty, purchased the profile for 2 shillings. Madame Lark watched me, stunned, as I stuffed my future husband's profile, hopefully, into my suitcase and stormed out into the street. It didn't matter to me what education or position this person had. The composition of his family was as unimportant as his taste preferences. Whether he prefers wine or cider, who cares? What was important was that he loved money and status, and judging by the expression on his face in his photo, he had plenty of the latter. By marrying DeClaire, he would have a title that he could show off to his friends, and I would become a married woman who would be willing to be hired. Unfortunately, employers are not interested in unmarried women. Later, when I have established my position and proven that I am a qualified professional, I will get a divorce. My husband will keep his title, and I will still have a job. Fabulous. Yes, my plan was simple and clear. All that remained was to visit my future husband and propose a scheme to circumvent the law. Technically, such fraud could lead to a prison sentence of up to 40 years. But who would know the truth? I tilted my face towards the gentle sun, and at the same time jumped off the porch. Fatigue made my body weak and clumsy, causing me to get tangled in the hem of my dress and roll towards the flower bed with a loud squeal. I risked tearing my delicate skin on the thorny roses. But in the middle of my fall, strong arms caught me. It blotted out the sun from view. I inhaled the now familiar scent of his cologne, squinted, and turned my head to see my savior. The man smiled wryly and pulled me to my feet, casually touching my bare wrist with his hand. The innocent contact pierced me, and I recoiled slightly. "Looking for a life partner?" asked the stranger, glancing briefly at the brightly painted blue door of the marriage agency. "Do people come to Hearts Aflame for any other reason?" I answered, confused. "You didn't come just for the coffee, did you?" "My name is Ray. No, not for coffee." "I really should go," I said awkwardly, stepping to the right to get around Ray, but tripping, forcing me to grab his elbow for support. "Sorry, I'm really in a hurry." "I'll go with you," Ray grinned. "How do you even walk in those heels?" "I'm usually not that clumsy. It's just been a crazy morning today, and why am I even telling you this? Sorry, but they're waiting for me somewhere else." However, the man did not lag behind. I had barely turned from the noisy street into a green park when Ray appeared in front of me again. "I have a proposition for you," he blurted out. Intrigued, I quirked an eyebrow, signaling that I was ready to listen. "You don't strike me as the kind of woman who would be willing to dive into a relationship with someone from an agency profile." "Is there something wrong with them?" I chuckled. "You, of course, notice." "I need a wife," Ray interrupted. "And you need a husband for a reason. Whatever your reasons for getting married, I'm ready to help." My eyebrows shot up even higher. Ray read the confirmation on my face, and his shoulders relaxed in recognition. I looked around nervously, fearing that we might be overheard, but there was no one in sight. The birds sang melodiously. A squirrel darted along the thick trunk of the nearest oak tree, and further, on the edge of the park, a drunkard snored under an ash tree. There is no one around who could stop Ray I from reaching an agreement. "How do you know?" I asked quietly. "I just guessed." "This is impossible." "Is it true? Why was I right then?" "I don't know," I stammered. I took a moment to admire Ray's delicate features and smiled at the sun's rays caught in his dark hair. He would make a very charming husband of convenience. I should take advantage of this opportunity. "Why do you need marriage?" "I need to get married to inherit my father's legacy. My uncle fears that my family's fortune will be squandered in bars and brothels rather than put to good use. However, if I have a wife, or even better, children, this will alleviate his fears." "And you intend to waste your family fortune in brothels?" I gasped. Ray rolled his eyes. "I have been financially independent from my father's money for some time now, but my uncle has his own views on this matter. I've shared my reasons, now it's your turn." "I have nowhere to live," I said with a wry smile. "There's literally nowhere to go. Right now I have nowhere to go except the hotel. Do not look at me so. You'd think you've never met people whose homes were taken away because of debt. And no, Don, I don't think it's my fault. It's my stepmother. Well, I need a marriage certificate to show at any medical practice to get a position. As soon as I get a job, I will be able to afford to rent an apartment or a room. And then, my housing problem will be resolved." A smile lit up Ray's face, and I even thought I saw gratitude in his eyes before he suddenly pressed his lips to the back of my hand. "How can I call you?" "Claire de Fleur." There was not a trace of surprise on his bright face, a striking contrast to the excitement that I expected at the mention of my last name. "Marry me, Claire de Fleur. I will give you a guest house that will become not just a place of residence for you, but also a small business, if you so desire. You will please me by kissing me just once at the altar, after which we can take copies of the certificate and go our separate ways. We will not see each other again for the rest of our days and will die on different days." "I agree." I nodded vigorously, afraid that Ray would change his mind. Joy filled my heart. An equally enthusiastic Ray led me by the hand from the park to the shiny roof of the church. The priest would have married us immediately if Ray had agreed to pay him, and I was sure that he would do it. The gift he promised me turned out to be a more than pleasant turn of events. All I wanted was a marriage certificate for someone, and here was such a wonderful surprise. My future husband was in a hurry, but he was tactful and attentive, making sure that I did not trip over my own feet and supported me when I did get tangled in the hem of my dress. Why do I even keep wearing these uncomfortable dresses? All the girls had already switched to trousers, and only I was forbidden to wear them. "It is not appropriate for a lady from high society to flaunt in men's attire," they said. But the de Fleur were no longer part of high society. Nobody invites us to balls anymore, and we have no visitors. Who cares what the heir to an impoverished family wears? "Wait," I said, freeing my hand from his tight grip and throwing the suitcase on the ground. The clasp clicked, and I blindly pulled the sharp scissors out of my pocket. "Help me, Ray." The man, with an amused expression on his face, held out the fabric, which I pressed into his hands as the blades of the scissors carefully cut the hem. Pieces of maroon silk were scattered on the green grass, glass beads clinked against a bouncing suitcase, and scissors glinted in the sun. In a matter of seconds, my long, luxurious dress turned into something ragged and short, which no respectable lady would dare to wear. Perhaps this is too enthusiastic. I clicked my tongue and sighed. But it doesn't matter. It's cooler this way. The sun was really hot. Young townswomen exposed their shoulders and hips to its rays, and I sweated in a hidden dress. Aristocratic women should not expose their flesh. This is what my stepmother said every morning, tightening the laces of my corset. I wheezed, trying to take a breath of air, but nodded obediently. I watched with envy as another half-naked, non-aristocrat walked by, regretting the D in my last name. Without money, this did not bring any benefit, but caused a lot of trouble. Just a few minutes later, we ducked from the stuffy street into the cool sanctuary of the church. In one of the dark corners where the gods don't look, Ray quietly handed the clergyman a check for a decent amount for the express ceremony. I was a believer, like many in Waferduck, but my faith was in a higher power, not in temples. Hired priests commanded no respect, so I could, with a clear conscience, swear before the Holy Father to love and cherish my husband, Ray Blythe, for the rest of my life. As I said tearful vows, I thought about how I would live in my new home. I wondered where it was and if it needed renovation. Honestly, I didn't care where it was as long as it was livable. Perhaps my husband would be so kind as to bear the expenses of the fictitious marriage as part of the house. If this were so, I would not have to grab the first job that came along. I could have looked for something better. "Seal your love with a kiss!" the clergyman's voice thundered. Before I even had time to squeak, the lips of my lawful husband, whom I had known for less than half an hour, covered mine. His kiss, fleeting and cool, sobered me up. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized what had just happened. My eyes opened, and it was as if I had woken up from a dream. "You are husband and wife," stated the Holy Father. And I burst into tears. Ray had to carry me out into the fresh air, where there were small white carved benches among fragrant flowers and green bushes. He sat me down on one of them, waited for my tears to subside, and only then sat down next to me. "I was obliged to kiss you, as is customary." "I know," I snorted. "It's just also unexpected. Last night I planned to wake up early, feed the ducks in the pond behind our property, and have coffee and butter pie. Then I had to practice playing the piano, drawing and sorting letters. But I only managed to wake up early, and even then not of my own free will. And now I am kissing a complete stranger in front of the Holy Father. The gods will curse me." Ray remained silent, and I sighed heavily, the previously soothing songs of the birds now getting on my nerves. "My first kiss should have been with someone I loved," I muttered by way of explanation. "Now I feel like a woman of ill repute." "In that case, I am as corrupt a person as you are. We made a mutually beneficial deal, didn't we? By the way, the train to Greygrove leaves in an hour, and if you want to be in your new home tomorrow, I would advise you to hurry to the station." "To Greygrove?" I exhaled, amazed. "This is practically the end of the world." "It's only 400 miles from the capital," Ray muttered, puzzled. "Are you bad at geography?" Internally, I froze. I could have refused the wedding gift and followed my original plan of looking for a job, but something inside me resisted this course. What if I can't find a place to stay overnight? Staying outside after dark, where unimaginable, obscene, and disgusting things happen, could not be considered a noble lady. Greygrove is good too, I admitted grudgingly. The province of Greygrove was located on the edge of a forest that no sane person could enter while sober, and had a very bad reputation. There were rumors that Greygrove was inhabited not by people, but by witches, vampires, werewolves, and even ghosts. Of course, these were just fairy tales, but I didn't want to check them. Ray watched me with curiosity as I tried to gather my strength. "Greygrove may be remote, but it has its advantages," he assured me. The guest house I mentioned is a very charming place, surrounded by nature. You may find it a refreshing change from city life. The notions of witches and werewolves lurking in Greygrove were probably nothing more than a series of tall tales concocted by superstitious locals. But they had a peculiar way of playing on the imagination. The idea of starting over in a place like this was both terrifying and strangely exciting. Besides, they say that fresh country air invigorates the soul, Ray continued, breaking into my thoughts. And who knows, maybe someday you'll find inspiration for your own medical practice. His attempt at reassurance sounded sincere, and for a moment I allowed myself to be entertained by the thought of becoming a respected Dr. Clare, perhaps a respected figure in my corner of the world. I stood up, smoothing out the freshly cut edges of my dress, my makeshift symbol of rebellion. "Well, Mr. Blythe," I said with newfound determination, "let's not keep Greygrove waiting." Ray nodded, and we collected the rest of my things. The dress no longer mattered, and neither did the discomfort of my tears. What was important was the further journey, to Greygrove, to the guest house, to the future that awaited me, no matter how mysterious it was. With a shared understanding, Ray and I headed to the station, each step bringing us closer to our destinies, intertwined with only a short ceremony and a guest house in a place shrouded in fairy tales and secrets. On the way to the station, the streets of Waferduck seemed to float by in a blur. The reality of my situation began to become clear, but amidst the uncertainty, a seed of worry was growing. Despite everything, the prospect of independence and a new start ignited a spark of optimism in me. The station was full of bustling travelers, merchants, and the rhythmic clank of steam engines. Ray silently purchased our tickets, a tacit but agreed-upon understanding bridging the gap between us. I couldn't help but wonder about his history, about the future he was so eager to secure behind the facade of our arranged marriage. As the train chugged away, I found a window seat and watched the smoke and architecture of Waferduck dissolve into the rolling hills and open countryside. Ray sat opposite me, keeping a polite distance in the empty compartment. The journey was long. The rhythmic sounds of the train on the tracks were almost meditative. In those quiet hours, when the landscapes opened up before me, the seriousness of my actions lay heavily in my chest. I, Claire de Fleur, was now officially Claire Blythe, married, but tied to the life I had created. By the time the train arrived at the small Greygrove station, dusk had colored the sky in shades of purple and gold. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine trees and earth. In the distance, a mysterious silhouette loomed against the background of the fading light, evoking a mixture of awe and awe. Ray took us to the guest house, which was indeed as charming as he described. Located on the outskirts of the village, it was a cozy two-story establishment with a cozy veranda and windows glowing with the warmth of the fireplace. He handed me a bunch of keys with a serious look in his eyes. "Now it's yours. Make it your home, your clinic, whatever your heart desires," he said. I took the keys, feeling their weight and symbolism in my palm. This was my refuge, my chance to rewrite Claire de Fleur's story, a story no longer tied to debt and despair. "Thank you, Ray." The words seemed small among the chorus of crickets and the whispering of leaves, but they carried my deep gratitude. Nodding in acknowledgement, Ray turned to leave, stepping into the night and returning to his vague efforts. Hearing the soft crunch of his retreating footsteps along the gravel path, I pushed open the door of the guest house. The chapter of my life as Claire de Fleurs had closed, but the pages of Claire Blythe's story were just beginning to turn, every word waiting to be written under the watchful eye of Greygrove Forest.